table. And I wholeheartedly believe that Brad Treliving is probably going to have that same type of mindset. Now, he may decide that, after meeting with Sheldon Keefe that, hey, I like this guy, and he's in-house, and they've had record-breaking regular seasons. So you get to the dance, and then you've got to change something there. Or it might be that somebody becomes available that you didn't think was available, or you might covet somebody else. But I think that has to apply for his roster and his coaching staff and his organization. They might sit down, Shane Doan and him might sit down for dinner one night, and Doan has an idea outside the box going, hey, I've been watching, keeping my eye on this guy who's an assistant coach somewhere else, or, an up-and-coming guy from the AHL. Like there's so many situations where management tries to tweak and maybe not outthink the other teams, but try different scenarios. Bill Zito, for example, that's a bold move. He traded Jonathan Huberdeau after a 115-point season.
Hart nomination.
That Barkov, the captain, that's his best friend, line mate, all of that. Like, walked in and said, you're traded. That's it. And
that's
we saw
there's a lot of things behind the scenes, Jimmy, that people don't understand. What if Austin Matthews, who is a high-ranking player, and what if his thoughts to the Leafs are, don't even think about trading Mitch because that's who I like doing my business with. So
right.
If everybody that thinks you need to trade somebody or trade Marner or this, like, the guy is he's one of the best players in the world. There's no question. He's a top 10 player in the world.
Nobody's arguing that.
The argument is all of them together. It's not necessarily like they make more money than everybody, but come playoff time, and I've always said this, it's not like they're 1, 2, 3 in scoring, and you're rolling along conference finals. That hasn't happened yet, and I always have to leave it out there. Could it? It could, but I find it very unlikely.
Well, it's just we've said this on the show. It can't happen again, can it? It can't happen again. Well, they won the round. They won the first round. And, everyone was excited, almost too excited, including myself. Like, I was like, Florida.
3 overtime wins in the road. That'll do it.
But also thought, I'm looking at, Goliath is gone. Like, that was Boston. Like, Florida took care of them.
Goliath is gone. Meet the new Goliath.
But that's my thought process, and I guarantee you 99.9% of Leaf Nation here was thinking the same thing.
Sure.
They're going to walk Florida.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it's Carolina, or who did Carolina play? I'm drawing a blank. It was the Rangers, wasn't it? So Either way, like you're thinking, okay, now all of a sudden we're in a conference final. Now we're in the Cup final. We're going to take care of somebody out east or out west, and maybe that's Edmonton if they make it through. A lot of people were sleeping on Vegas, who had 111 points because they thought Edmonton would get by them eventually. So ultimately, you got to give yourself a chance to get there, but this team has to look different. I just looked at the team and watched the playoffs. That Vegas team, compare them to the Leaf team.
Oh, no.
Like, it's just the depth, the fourth line, the defensive core, how hard they played, physicality, all of that type of stuff. The coaching
Jamie,
systematic.
I do it all the time. I look at the game when Vegas was. And I do it because of the market we work in. I watch Vegas when they're rumbling around and they mean business and they take over a game. And I always think, like, how would the Leafs be reacting right now? How would they handle it? Could they compete? Would they be playing? I think about that all the time when a team's having success like that.
Absolutely. Right. How could you not? Let's bring in Liam McHugh now from he's the host on the NHL on TNT. Liam, welcome. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Very good. So, give us some perspective on what that Vegas Stanley Cup means to the league and Vegas.
Well, to the city, it's I think unthinkable. Something that like 10 years ago people couldn't even have dreamed about because this was a town that sat there wondering for decades if it would ever have a pro franchise for obviously for various reasons, certainly gambling being one of them. But now we've turned on that. Pretty sharply, and now they're looking at different franchise for all different sports. But I think it's great because this team really bonded with the community. I was there for their home opener back in 2017, which came 9 days after that tragic shooting, and they had a Vegas show and a party and a celebration plan for it, and it all had to pivot and rather sharply to, a reflective mood and one that was somber and one that wanted to honor the victims and the first responders. I remember Derek Englund, who had strong ties to Vegas, speaking, from the heart that night, and that really became a night where this team, forged such a strong and special bond with the community. And now, years later, it's got a real hockey vibe to it that we didn't expect. So I don't know. It's a special thing for this team to win, especially for those guys that were there the entire time, because those were the guys that people didn't want. They were the cast-offs. They were the misfits. So now, at the same time, of course, you look at it from the outside, and it's like, on the ice, they haven't suffered like a lot of franchises have. And that's what stings for a lot of clubs. But this is a team that's built to win. It's big, it's strong, it's deep, and it showed in that final.
Liam, were there any nights that you guys were covering in the finals that you were concerned that your panel was going to make it to the game, given the city that you guys were in?
Any night, every single night. I mean, we got into that Final Four, and I could see these guys' eyes getting wide. I'm like, oh, God. I'm thinking about it. I'm like, maybe Carolina would be a little bit safer. Just about anywhere in the West would be a whole lot safer for this group. But, yeah, I mean, it's funny because I arrive usually to the game a little bit early. I arrive with the game guys. I go over to Edzo and Jonesy and Kenny Albert, and I try to get my bearings. But there's a big part of me that sits there and goes, they're going to show up, right? Like, they're going to make it to the game, right? We have eyes on them at some point. But this crew is – that's kind of the best thing about them is, like, they live life, they have fun, and they want to carry that into the broadcast. And we hope it comes across to the fans because, like, there's a loose script, there's stuff that we want to get in there, but on the whole, we want to talk about the fact that we went to David Blaine and Biz had his mind completely blown. And my hope is that we don't spend an entire hour talking about it. But if it turns out to be interesting, we'll go that route. But I'm proud of the guys. They made it through, although 5 games was probably the limit for them.
Liam, we were talking. All the chatter in Toronto, or my kind of point of view, is watching the success Vegas had and the way they went about doing it. Do you think that might spark some GMs to put their feet up on their desk and kind of scratch their head and say, maybe I need to switch something up on my team because I'm falling in love with something that maybe doesn't work, so I got to be like a Zito or a McCrimmon and make some changes? And it doesn't have to be the drastic ones that they made, but just something maybe?
I think it's interesting because what we've seen from this league, and certainly what we've seen from the draft, and we're going to see it again in this draft with Connor Bedard, is this move to small, quick players. And not that you want a smaller player, but I think the idea is if a player is small, it's really not that big a deal anymore as long as they are fast, can get up and down the ice, and they can really play the game, which, Bedard obviously can do wonderfully. But then you look at what Vegas brought to the table, and, it's 60 men who are big, they are physical, and can play the game. And I think they're also smart. So you're looking for physicality, but you're looking for a physical group of players that knows when to do it, where the line is, and where to cut it off. And that's what Vegas has. Now, I think they also, they've been a team that's been extremely aggressive over the years in free agency. They've been cutthroat at times with players that, were fan favorites. And they got the perfect final piece, which is they got Jack Eichel. They needed him, and he turned into the Jack Eichel we all thought he was going to be when he was drafted right behind Connor McDavid. Yeah. I don't know how much you can take away just simply because I think you look at this team and you say, oh, their leading scorer in the regular season only had 66 points. I don't think Jack Eichel ever has a regular season like that again. I think he's 90, 100 plus for the rest of his career. So it's a bit misleading, but I think it could definitely have a few GMs going, man, you know what, having some big physical guys, probably what I need here when we come playoff time.
Now, knowing what you know, you probably dug around and couldn't say it on air, but what the Panthers were going through as far as some of the injuries and guys basically limping to get to the ice, was it pretty much a Cinderella run that you expected? Because once Paul Maurice laid things out afterwards of how bad some of the injuries were, you were surprised that they were able to hang in that long.
No doubt. I mean, I think we're always astounded at this. I always go back to that 2013 final when Patrice Bergeron, after that, we found out he had a punctured lung and a cracked rib. And I'm like, what? Were we even going to know that if he went to Game 7, or was he just going to play it? I'm always astounded at what these guys go through. I think we had heard whispers about Ekblad, but we'd really heard them throughout the final and a little bit in the conference final, but not too much. But then to hear the extent of his injuries and then to find out from Paul Maurice that he'd been dealing with it since early on in the series against Boston and just kept going. I don't know what else to say. I grew up a soccer player. Like, if someone stubs their toe, like, we're out for months. We don't want anything to do with this. Like, that sort of pain and dedication is almost beyond comprehension. I think every other sport. But I think the incredible thing is we've seen guys play through pain before. I don't think we've seen him play at this level before. And the Tkachuk thing is astounding because I don't know how you play through that injury. I don't know how you play in Game 4. And I don't know how you find yourself in front of the net after you get hit like that. But that's where he was. That's where he scores the big goals. That's where he sends a game into overtime and nearly sends another game into overtime. So just to have that sort of courage. And also, I love the fact that after the game, Tkachuk's in the middle of a scrum, still mucking it up. And I'm sure the trainer's going, oh, God, just please skate over here. Just get away from him. But it's just not in his nature. These guys are built differently. And I think Tkachuk is one of those guys where you look at, the trade they made. I don't think anyone thought he'd come over and score 100 points this first season in Florida. I certainly didn't. But, man, he is built differently, and he is a rare player in this league now where he gets under your skin and also can put up 100 points and then be better in the playoffs.
I like what you said earlier about Eichel, because in the post game, as the celebration's happening and he's interviewed, and I saw a couple of interviews, it was almost like he was going to cry. He was very humbled by the experience, and it made you sort of understand, if you could, the what he went through with the injury assessment, how he had to fight for, what he wanted to have done with his neck, and how Vegas embraced him. I mean, that's a phenomenal story, isn't it?
I think I think it makes you think about him in a different way. It makes you realize that, just because things didn't work out magnificently with Buffalo where he was drafted doesn't mean that his story's over. And I think he wanted to restore his reputation as a player, and he also wanted to restore his reputation in the league as someone who really cared about this game. And he shouldn't have to do that, right? He didn't, it's sort of odd that it came to this, but I think the fresh start worked for him, and it's weird because it's one of those stories where I think it works out for Buffalo too. I think the trade will wind up being very good for them in the future. But you got to feel for just how much it meant to him. It really does. And he found the right place. He's got his game in the right spot. And we saw it twice during that final where, first off, he got just leveled by Tkachuk. And then later he takes a puck right to the neck of all places. This guy has this surgery that no one had ever had and come back from. And then we saw the video of his family rubbing his neck after. I mean, there were 7 different family members, making sure he was okay. It was, I don't know, it was touching. It was heartwarming. I feel great for the guy. I really do. And I have to say, part of me, though, is sort of happy he didn't win the Conn Smythe. I have some deep Buffalo ties, and I don't know if Sabres fans could have handled Ryan O'Reilly leaving and winning the Conn Smythe and then the Stanley Cup, and then seeing Eichel win it as well. There's only so much Buffalo can take, and they've taken a lot. But I'm happy for the guy. He deserves it. And I think the cool thing is we're just seeing the start for him now.
Liam, you guys do probably a lot of Los Angeles, Anaheim matchups, Boston, New York Rangers. It's American-based. What do you think the general consensus of Leafs Nation is up there? Do people think they're close? What's the chatter about the Leafs and the prospect of them possibly closing this out 1 year?
It's funny. I think you get a lot of confusion down here because I think they see up north and they know how passionate fans are, and that they're, sometimes because you're so passionate, there has to be this all right, we have to switch something. We have to do something massive. We have to do something different. And I think down here it feels like, God, they're talented enough in some ways to win this. So do they have to change a ton, or is it minor? Is it, honestly, is it, the changes they've made already? Is it something further? Is it a coach? Is it another player? Or is it just this team just doesn't have it collectively? I think there's confusion about it. I will say that, I'm on a text chain with the whole panel. And, we're going back and forth all the time, and a lot of it's not about hockey. But when it is about hockey, it's interesting. And I thought, it was fascinating that when the GM hire was made, it was sort of like, all right, that sounds reasonable. That sounds like a good move. And it was measured on that text chain. And everyone felt like this could be a good way to go. But it feels like at this point, there aren't a lot of people calling for it to be blown up, and it shouldn't be because you've taken a step. But to me, it just feels almost as if there's an attitude that needs to change. And that attitude is sort of what the Florida Panthers brought, which is I don't care about my body. I don't care what I have to sacrifice. All I want to do is not lose. And if it tears me apart physically and mentally, I'm willing to have that happen. And I think if you can get there and have that type of talent with Toronto, there's no reason why you shouldn't be in a cup final. But, that I will say, as I said before, to make a mental adjustment like that is a big one, to be able to turn that switch on and be, play in a way that you just don't care. You have no regard for your personal health. But I think if they could get to that point with their talent, why not?
Yeah, big time. Now that we're in the off season, do you focus on any particular teams, especially with, some of the teams that are maybe forced to make some moves? A team like Winnipeg, you're going to track Calgary and their situations. Basically, you've got some star players that are a year away from unrestricted free agency, including here Toronto. Austin Matthews and William Nylander need new contracts. Do you track, is this kind of your favorite time of year as far as water cooler talk of potential trades?
This is my favorite time of year because I go home for a few days, and
that's fair.
And I have to say my bosses leave me alone, so it's kind of nice. But I'm like you guys. Like, I'm looking forward to it. I'm curious, and I'm always eager around draft time if something big is going to happen. And it's been interesting to be around Keith Jones during these moments because, first off, he was so secretive, obviously, about becoming the president of the Flyers, that Kenny Albert, who was spending like nearly every waking moment with him, didn't even know it was happening until the press conference. But he was on a flight with us. He got off a flight, said, I have to make a drive. I'm going to go see my wife in Florida. And he drove there, and then 3 hours later, Provorov got traded. And I was like, what? I was just with this guy for like 9 hours. I didn't even see him on his phone. But I thought it was interesting because right after that happened, it felt a little bit like, okay, well, the league is now on notice. A decent-sized move has been made, and now we can get rolling. And my hope is that this leads to some chatter and some talk during the draft, and some teams can make some moves and make this an interesting offseason. Because I've been there. I've done a bunch of these drafts. I did them when we were on NBC, and there was nothing like hearing from guys like, Bobby Mack and Darren Dreger, like, oh, don't worry, there's going to be a lot of trades. And then we got there, and I'm like, what happened? There were no trades. Like, we're on there for 3 hours, buddy. I thought something interesting was going to happen. So my hope is that got the wheels in motion, and we'll see some bigger deals, and some teams will be aggressive during this offseason because it's not the greatest unrestricted free agent class in history, that's for sure. But I still think there's room for teams to improve and teams to move around. So, but of course, Toronto's at the top of that list. Winnipeg's an interesting one, certainly. Yeah. It really is because I think they, in many ways, overachieved during the regular season. They were, and they're a team that's, let's be honest, like, if you're a free agent and you're in your 20s and you're from Canada and you grew up in the cold weather, would you rather sign at a place like Vegas or would you rather sign at a place like Winnipeg? It's tough for them to get free agents. It's hard. It just is. But if they can get the right pieces, they could win there.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
On the way out, you're going home for a couple of days because you're the TV host on MLS on Apple, so you've got some work to do. How excited are you for Messi joining the MLS, and what kind of a business impact do you think you'll have?
It's going to be massive. It was crazy to be in South Florida when that news broke. Like murals went up like overnight in the town, and they're in the middle of the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup final, and then Messi came in and stole headlines. That's how big he is. It's Beckham on steroids. It really is. When Beckham came into the league, it shook everything up. The league gained so much interest, and now it has so many different soccer-specific stadiums. It's into Canada. It's doing so well in the markets up there. It's enormous. And I don't think it can be understated. And now we're hearing that because of him, you're going to see a good chance of a bunch of other fairly high-profile European players following in his footsteps and wanting to play. Now, when they play an outdoor game in late February, early March in Minnesota or Toronto, they may be like, ooh, well, I don't know about this. That was a tough decision. But I think, you're talking about a guy who is also not – and there used to be this reputation that this was like, oh, it's a retirement league for European players. Messi's still prime player. He's still right there. He just won the World Cup and showed on the biggest stage that he'd be the best player in the world. So if you can get someone at the height of their powers – who is also at the height of their popularity in their sport, maybe the greatest of all time, it shakes everything up. So I'm excited about it. I'm also excited that they've given me this Saturday off to, balance some things at home. And, as I'm talking to you, I'm going to pick up 2 kids from soccer tryouts. So, but it's a huge thing for the league, and I can't wait to watch them play here.
Liam, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
Liam McHugh, NHL on TNT host, and of course does the MLS on Apple TV. So busy guy.
Yeah.
Busy guy.
Thanks to Arad for sewering me there, too.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. My second favorite producer. You just leave him alone now.
He sends a text saying, Jim is going to ask the last one. I said, okay, go ahead. And then I'm just sitting there.
Actually, he told me O-Dog would go, and then I would ask the question. So I think
that's what needed to be
double
straightened
sewer.
out.
I think it was a double sewer.
It was just,
I thought he was telling me don't follow O-Dog because Jim's going to ask the last question.
yeah.
Anyway,
it's
we'll
fine.
call it a misunderstanding, Jim.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay. Just mark that down. That's one. Okay, good. Coming up next, Richard Griffin talking about baseball. This is Overdrive on TSN 1050 and TSN 2. Oh, Yes Guy. Jim Tatti subbing for Hazy B. Be back on Monday, which means more Yes Guy, No Guy tomorrow. Just got clearance from the legal office. Yes Guy, No Guy is double-decked for tomorrow. All right. So coming up very shortly, Richard Griffin, 4-2, the Orioles over the Jays today. Jays lose 2 of 3 from Baltimore, have trouble in their own division, and really dove into the pen today to get this done. And there's where the numbers kind of scare you, is, the starting pitching doesn't do the job, and then you wear out your bullpen. So there are concerns here, right?
Well, as soon as they get you watching and they go on a heater, like after their miserable slump, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Then they won 4 or 5 series in a row, I believe, and you're thinking, okay, they're back on track. The pitching's maybe coming around, and then the Manoah thing happens, and it just seems like some inconsistencies. It's like they're world beaters one night, and then all of a sudden you're like 9-2 in the second inning in Baltimore the other day. It's like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, it's not inspirational, is it? It's just, I don't know. And the fact it's Baltimore, Baltimore has done things that the Jays wanted to do in a less period of time. I call this the moving target. You're chasing these guys. All of a sudden, this guy comes out of nowhere, and you're chasing him now too, when it didn't happen for you. Kind of frustrating, to say the very least.
Yeah, this team, they're inconsistent too. Like, you've got to get the pitching, which they have with certain guys, but are they going to replace Manoah full time? Are they going to be scouring the trade market? Like, there's a lot of questions I think that have to be sorted out, because they're certainly not playing well against the teams in their division, and that's who they're trying to catch.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Plenty of runway left is the way everybody describes this. Let's bring in Richard Griffin. You can find him on griffsthepitch.com, or host of Exit Philosophy podcast with our good friend Scotty MacArthur. Griff, how are you today, sir?
Hey, I'm good, Jim. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
I got one question, and it's legit. It's now middle of June, and NBA and NHL just ended. Why not make hockey a Summer Olympic sport, and then we won't have to worry about breaking the season down?
Okay.
I don't know. Do you want to work year round? I think we could figure that out.
O-Dog says no.
No, that's an absolute no. Like a really big no.
I'll go with O-Dog. I love his opinions, and that holds a lot of water with me. Forget it, man.
Griff, we were just talking about the Jays. Like, I think if you're a fan of the team, it's just the inconsistencies right now. Like, you think they're crawling out of it after the massive slump where things were looking bleak, and then they come out of it, they win 3 or 4 series, and then it's really hit or miss right now, isn't it?
Yeah, and this road trip is, I mean, they won 1 out of 3 from Baltimore, but Baltimore is part of that uber tough AL East, and 6 and whatever it is, 16 isn't going to do it within your division, especially when you're already the fourth in the wild card race. So that's where they have to. I mean, outside the division, they've been doing fine. That's where they've been winning series, and they go to Texas, which is a tough opponent, and Miami, which has good pitching on this road trip. And so they have to at least win one of those 2 series before they come home for the holiday for July 1st.
So, Griff, we know the Jays are not good against the AL East teams, but what does that say about the team? Is it just, is it the way they stack up against it? Is it the way they're mentally preparing? Like, what does that say about with their record against the AL East?
I think what has to happen and what has sort of showed a little bit is that their hitters have to hit. And I mean, because you can't blame the starting pitching other than Alek Manoah. And if Alek Manoah had been what he was last year, this team would be right up there just behind the Rays and with the Orioles. But that didn't happen. Springer has been coming back a little bit. Vlad has to be the Vlad of 2 years ago. He can't be this Vlad. And, so much was made of we're going to take care of details. We got rid of the Berrios at the end of the dugout, so now it's all business. And all of a sudden, that doesn't look so special or important anymore. And Vlad is, clearly struggling. I think that has to happen. That has to turn around. Some of the other hitters, like Danny Jansen, had 2 home runs in this afternoon's game. He's back, and Kirk is starting to hit. So the catching should be all right. But they just have to produce more runs with the same number of hits and the offense. They're not going to change anyone in that starting lineup, but they have to hit in clutch positions and get a little more run production.
Griff, you just really mapped out the frustration because we can zero in on the starting pitching, the Manoah story, and the effect that would have on the bullpen. But the fact of the matter is not getting timely hits, leaving runners stranded, and defensively lapse, time after time. And the problem for me is that they seem to get to the same spot, which is, a couple of bricks short every year. And I don't mean to be negative, but Baltimore comes out of nowhere. Tampa does what the Jays are supposed to do, and Tampa does that on a yearly basis. And the Jays just seem to chug along, and that you have optimism, but they don't seem to take the next step. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think Baltimore comes out of nowhere because they were the worst team in baseball for 4 or 5 years in a row and had top draft picks. So their farm system has been producing guys like Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson. And, yeah, if you want to finish 4th or 5th, or if you want to finish last for 4 or 5 years in a row and accumulate draft picks, that's fine. But as we all know, with the amount of money that Rogers is sinking into the stadium, they can't afford to be mediocre. They can't afford to rebuild. They will never rebuild this team as long as they've spent that much money on private clubs, which are coming next year, and the renovations that they've made. They can't afford to go into a 4 or 5 year period where fans aren't coming to the park because they spent so much money on it. So this team is destined to be mediocre at worst. That's not encouraging for fans, but I don't think they will ever go into a rebuild like Baltimore, and that's why Baltimore is where they are right now.
Griff, if I had asked you last year about this turnaround for Berrios, what would you have said? Because I kind of get pessimistic when someone takes a downward turn like that, where he got paid and it was so ugly last year. I'm like, maybe this is big-time trouble. I personally didn't see the turnaround. Did you kind of think that he would do this?
Yeah, knowing him and being around him the 4 years or the year and a half, 2 years that he was there when I worked for the ball club, and being in that clubhouse and watching his work ethic and watching the way he took it personally and the work he put into sort of returning to where he was. I mean, I wrote a column on griffthepitch.com, and Jim, thank you for plugging it earlier. I wrote a column like the first couple of weeks of the season talking about his comeback, and you could see it coming, but his game against Baltimore yesterday was just stunning to watch.
Yeah, it was good.
The precision with which he threw to the corners and his aggressiveness on the mound, and the fact that he was back in terms of body language and in terms of stuff. So I saw it coming last year. I love the guy. I was hoping that it would turn around, and I don't think this is just temporary. I think that he is back to what he was for the majority of his career, which is a 100-pitch or more starting pitcher who can dominate.
Griff, you mentioned Alek Manoah earlier, and he's going to pitch in a simulated start tonight. What do you think the end game with him pitching in these simulated games is, and if this is kind of like the first step for him, we'll call it his rehab down where he's in this facility?
Actually, I think that it's a whole new ball game for Major League Baseball, and it started with COVID in 2020 where the minor league seasons were canceled, and Alek Manoah was one of those guys who went to the alternate site in Rochester and improved so much that when he came to spring training in 2021, he was he was Major League ready, but they kept him down for a month so that they would have that extra year of service time. But I think that the game itself, not just the Blue Jays, but Major League Baseball has changed in terms of what's better for a pitcher. Is it going down and throwing to AAA hitters until you're ready to come back? And we've seen how deceiving those numbers can be. Or is it going to the pitching lab in Dunedin at the player development complex and having hands-on where you're not pitching in games to 18 or 19-year-olds who want to crush you. What you're doing is relearning how to throw your pitches, the shape, and it's all being monitored. And I think that Alek Manoah is the first in a long line of how they're going to handle the situation of a major league pitcher who's struggling.
Griff, not your first rodeo. Can you do a comparison between what you see with Manoah and other pitchers, not necessarily Blue Jays, but if you want to go down the Blue Jay road, in the past?
Yeah, I mean, there's the sophomore jinx. This is like an extra year later, but the sophomore jinx is not about any sort of a jinx or a voodoo or anything like that. It's the fact that and it accelerates because of the amount of video available. I mean, they even have iPads in the dugout. But a pitcher has to believe that he has to make adjustments even if he's been successful. A hitter has to believe that he has to make adjustments because the pitchers are making adjustments to him. And if you've had success and it gets to your head, and I'm not saying this is what happened with Alek Manoah, but he has had a lot of distractions over the past winter where he finished third in Cy Young balloting and then had a busy winter of promotions and whatever. Then he comes to spring training. He's the lowest paid pitcher on the Blue Jays pitching staff by about $9.5 million. And he thinks he's the best pitcher on the pitching staff. And he doesn't make those adjustments. And it's a part of the maturation process that he's going through. And there's a ton of major league pitchers in the past. You know, Roy Halladay, not quite the same situation because he never had the real success before he failed. But O knows, and Jamie knows it, most athletes have to fail before they appreciate success. And this is what's happening with Alek Manoah.
Griff, do you think that you talked about Vladdy needing to play better, and last season was decent season, but not compared to the 48 he knocked out of the park in 21. Is there a way that maybe, I'm going to say this, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but is he hemorrhaging some money here on a long-term contract, or do you think that he'll be fine as far as his career earnings. But I'm talking about, is he in the ballpark with some of the guys with these massive contracts based on his play the last little while?
Yeah, no, I don't think he's hemorrhaging money here because it's all about the people who have gone before you, the Fernando Tatis and guys like that.
Right.
And, the fact that he became a Gold Glove first baseman makes up for some of the other factors. I think they knew he wasn't like a 70 home run guy, a 60 home run guy, because even in the minor leagues, he was a line drive, 100-mile-an-hour exit velocity, but not elevating as many home runs as people probably imagined that he did. And so they're comparing him to what he can do and to the players that have signed before him, and it doesn't focus so much on the production of the last couple of years, because the good thing for Vlad is that teams now seem to be paying for what you've done in the past. Free agents that go to other teams seem to be like deceptive in terms of like, you didn't do that for me, and now I'm paying you for what you've done in the past. But young players seem to be signing with their original organization, and I think if Vlad does that, he will be right up there with the others that have gone before him and had mega salaries.
Griff, it's been a while. Nice to hear your voice again. Thanks very much.
All right, guys. Anytime.
Richard Griffin, griffsthepitch.com, and Exit Philosophy podcast with our good friend Scotty MacArthur. Just on the way out, U.S. Open, Mackenzie Hughes 1 under through 5, and Nick Taylor 2 over through 4. So we'll have something to talk about on the other side. We'll do that. And he said rebuild. The Jays don't want to rebuild. Let's apply that to everybody else. We'll do that next. This is Overdrive on TSN 1050 and TSN 2. Oh, where's the afternoon go? Final segment. Time now for Best Bets. Today's Best Bets is brought to you by FanDuel. Bet on all your favorite teams on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. And here we go. Let's start with the top MLB rivalry, the Yankees and Red Sox. Domingo Herman is on the mound for the Yankees, so let's take them on the money line at minus 106. CONCACAF Nations League is on tonight. Canada taking on Panama, so let's take Canada on the money line at minus 165. And finally, staying with the Nations League, big North American rivalry, USA against Mexico on tonight. Let's take the young USA team on the money line at plus 120. Throw $20 on the FanDuel and win 117. Today's best bets are powered by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. Find thousands of ways to wager. Please play responsibly. Must be 19 and over and physically located in Ontario. So that's our best bet. And we have time for one more. It's leftover Yes Guy, No Guy, right? Is that what this is?
Yes Guy After Dark. I love it.
Yes Guy, No Guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers, time now for the final Yes Guy, No Guy of the afternoon. And again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, drivers and passengers, Yes Guy, No Guy will be played in its entirety again tomorrow. Here it is. Yes. Rory McIlroy's major drought will continue past this season.
No guy, no guy, no guy, no guy, Jimmy. I just saw Rory McIlroy. And let me ask you this. Par 3, 258 yards.
Oh.
Jimmy, what are you pulling? What club?
My driver.
Seriously?
Yeah. That's the only way I'm going to get there. It's not the 3-wood.
Guess what he hit?
Probably a 7.
4-iron.
4-iron.
No, a 4-iron. He
Hit
a 4-iron, 258 yards to 2 feet. So if anybody thinks some of the numbers are ridiculous on how long the holes are there, that's why. I'm going to say no guy. I'm going to say he wins this weekend, Jimmy.
Oh, wow. Okay. Noodles, where are you?
I'm saying no guy. I think he seems like he's been a distracted athlete recently, but
yeah,
with all this live stuff kind of maybe merging, and he doesn't have to be the face of the PGA golf, always talking about it and stuff. I think he can just get back to settling into his game. And yeah, I like watching him. So I think there's a chance he gets back into the winning ways sooner than later. So I'm a yes guy. Is it yes guy or no?
No, it's
guy?
no guy.
I'm a no guy.
Yeah. The line is Rory McIlroy's major drought will continue past this season. You're saying no
guy.
No guy.
No guy.
Well, I'm going to say yes guy. I hate to go against the grain, but somebody has to. He's 3 under through 6 in this particular event, so maybe this is the weekend. But I just think that he's going to regroup. He's going to find his groove, and he's going to be back next year with a vengeance. And in terms of that 258-yard par 3, I'm going to dust off my old favorite line. I don't go that far on my holidays.
Is that what you say when somebody hits a long drive, Jimmy?
I said that when Nick Taylor canned that putt on Sunday. I said, what a marvelous putt. I don't go that far on my holidays.
I love
That's
it.
a great line, Jimmy. That's a great golf line.
No, it's actually not. It's not an original line. I want to pay tribute to, and unfortunately he's no longer with us. A golf pro from this area, Laurie Buckland, was the guy who gave me that line many years ago when I golfed with him, and I had an inordinate lengthy putt. And as he watched me line up the ball, that was his line, and he said I could use it. So I use it to pay tribute to him.
I love it.
That's
a
very
great
nice,
line.
Jimmy. Is there any Canadians sniffing around the mix?
I'm just going to go to the leaderboard. No.
Wasn't Connors even?
Connors was even. We had Mackenzie Hughes at 1 under through 5.
Hadwin?
Hadwin was even as well. Mackenzie
Yeah.
Hughes, there's Mackenzie Hughes. Corey Connors even, Hadwin even. Svensson was, I think he was 2 over, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
gotta
it
go
doesn't
down.
seem like that bad in a normal U.S. Open,
1
Jim,
over.
but when it's like 8 under, 2 guys leading at 8 under, that's a long way back, man.
Well, it is. So you got 2 guys that smash, it's never been done before, and that lasted for Ricky Fowler, 15 minutes?
Nah, no kidding.
Yeah. Well,
So here's what I
either
want to
way.
throw at you guys. We've got about 2 minutes left. He said, Griff said, the Jays will never rebuild. Well, do you think the Raptors would ever rebuild? Do you think the Leafs would ever rebuild? I don't think anybody rebuilds in this market.
well, they
You know
did.
what? The market,
they
the
did,
market
but-
takes whatever you give them, Jim. What are they going to do? Are they going to boycott? They're not going to boycott and not go to the games. So I learned early on working at TSN that's like, whatever you do, the market has to deal with it. There's no such thing, because the talk early on was, the market could never handle or put up with a rebuild. They handle whatever was put in front of them.
I agree.
So that's a simple truth. The team wants to rebuild or go in a different direction. That's what the fan base has dealt with. No one has a choice. End of story.
And the Leafs got out in front of their rebuild. They said Payne was coming, but they hired
Yeah.
an elite coach, and he helped coach them out of it. Really, when they drafted Matthews and all those kids were young, he was trying to teach them lessons on the way and on the fly and experience. And to me, the rebuild they did bottom out. I mean, it was the dignified tank for Matthews.
Got to go. So we do this again tomorrow at 4, right?
Yes, we will.
Yes, guy.
Yes, guy.
Okay,
I love it.
we'll chat then.